There's set to be a higher minimum wage that will apply to aged care workers, and the federal government says it will pay for it. But how much will it be? Well, Labor is not actually putting a number on it. To talk more on this and some of the other stories of the day, joining me now is Bridget McKenzie, a National Senator, also the Shadow Transport Minister, amongst some other portfolio responsibilities. Thanks for your time. This has been a big talking point. We know we need aged care workers. What do you make of Labor's move on this? Backing an increase, saying they'll pay for it, but not saying how much it should be.
Well, again, you know, Labor's lacking in the detail. We all want a really high quality, affordable aged care system in this country. It's why when we were in government, we ran the Royal Commission. We put in excess of $19 billion on the table to assist in the rollout of the recommendations from those findings. And part of that piece is obviously the workforce, having a well-trained, accessible workforce that's well paid. And that's obviously going to be a decision for the Independent Fair Work Commission. They're considering that case at the moment and have been for some time. So as a coalition, obviously, we'll wait for that outcome and respect the decision. For me, obviously, as a Nationals Senator, I'm very concerned that whatever decision the Commission makes, and obviously the other aspects that come out of Labor's skills package post the September conference, actually make sure that we can keep aged care facilities open across rural and regional Australia, and that our residents can have access to high quality, affordable care.
So if you're saying Labor's lacking in the detail, what should the increase be according to you?
Well, Tom, they're the ones that have put a submission into the Fair Work Commission. That's a matter for Labor. We know the unions are calling for a 25% increase. You know, that's not a question for me or for the opposition. I mean, we absolutely respect the Fair Works Commission's role. But
did the coalition in government ever put a specific number on a Fair Work Commission submission in terms of an increase in pay?
Well, so the Fair Work Commission was set up by the Labor Party to be able to do that really deep investigation, consult with all stakeholders within a particular industry around wage increases or not, and for them to be an independent decision maker in that sphere, which is as it should be. You don't want governments making decisions about wage increases. That would be highly inappropriate. So it's appropriate the Fair Work Commission has that role. They've been speaking to stakeholders right across the industry. They're highly expert in this field and will back their decision in, no matter what it is.
So, right, but why is it Labor lacking on the... From all what you said there, that's fair enough, and the coalition hasn't put a number on it before, but why did you say Labor's lacking on the detail?
I was responding to your question.
Yeah, sure.
Because your question,
you said it was Labor lacking the detail.
Sort of saying, why isn't Labor coming up with a number? Well, that's a question for Labor.
No, I just asked if it was the right approach. I didn't say why were they not coming up with a number.
Well, you know, I think we've got an industrial relations system in this country that has an independent decision-making body, being the Fair Work Commission. That's how our system works. It allows them to do that deep-level engagement across the sector, depoliticises the conversation, and I make my opening point that we absolutely want a high-quality, affordable aged care system, and that part of that is about ratios, part of that is about infrastructure, another part is obviously about attracting the right workforce, and that obviously wages are a part of that, we know that.
Okay.
So, you know, the Fair Work Commission will bring down their finding and we will absolutely support that.
There's a proposal for a lower emissions coal-fired power plant in Queensland. It looks likely to be rejected from these reports we're seeing at a state level because it would increase emissions and be inconsistent with the pledge from the Queensland government. What do you make of that development?
Yeah, well, I think it's an example of something I've been raising for a little while. It's when we legislate these targets, as we did in last sitting week, it opens the potential for a decrease in investment, not just in energy projects such as the project you're speaking about, but also in my own portfolio area of infrastructure, because, you know, steel, concrete are high energy intensive products that are involved in building our roads, building our ports, bridges and the like. So when we legislate a target, what we've seen is that it's, in other countries, it's pushed out the time frame for infrastructure development and in some cases cancelled projects, which is, you know, what we don't want to see, particularly with the economy as it is. The Labor Party obviously took that 43% target to the election. They won the election. They have a mandate for implementing that, and so they rightfully changed our what's called a nationally determined contribution, that international commitment that we made in Glasgow, and they've updated that according to their own policy. But by legislating that, there's going to be all these created uncertainty. And Tom, one of my concerns is when they updated the target, they also removed one of the key protections in that nationally determined contribution commitment we made, and it was for a 5-yearly Productivity Commission inquiry into the impacts of our climate ambition on rural and regional communities in our industries, because safeguard mechanism, those 215, I think, companies, so majority are out in the regions underpinning our local communities. So we need to have an eye for the impact of legislating these targets, not just the aspect.
Right, but the implication there is, I mean, you said it gives you uncertainty. If you legislate, it actually gives you certainty. The implication there is if you don't legislate it, what? You can not worry about hitting the target if you don't think it's convenient on various projects you have.
No, Tom,
is
not
that
at
the
all.
Flexibility you want?
Not at all. Not at all. No, not at all. So when we took a net zero by 2050 position to Glasgow, we had a plan to get there. It wasn't just some target we sat on the shelf and, you know, patted ourselves on the back. Now, the Labor Party wanted to change that commitment, that international commitment, to a 43% reduction in emissions by 2030. They won the election. They just had to update that international commitment, which they did. It was one of the first acts that they did, whilst also simultaneously removing some of the protections we'd built in. Now, that I'm assuming, if they've said 43%, that they've also got a plan to get there. They don't need legislation to ensure that they get there. What we have seen in the UK, in particular, where they have legislated their target, there have been legal cases brought around, you know, the extension of the third runway at Heathrow Airport, a raft of other infrastructure projects.
All right.
And also what was in the legislation brought was our own agencies like Infrastructure Australia, which basically sets our infrastructure builds, will be more likely to prioritise public transport projects here in capital cities like Sydney instead of critical infrastructure for the regions like road, rail and airports.
All right.
And so,
worth noting a lot of
implications.
Worth noting a lot of business groups who are actually after the certainty of legislating it. We are nearly out of time. 30 seconds just to reflect on. Were you a Greece fan growing up, Senator?
Yeah, look, Tom, thank you. I grew up in a little country town called Benalla, and our grade 5 birthday parties centred on going to the cinema to watch Greece, and I did beg Santa for the album. Now, kids, that's actually something that you don't know exists these days. But yeah, Hopelessly Devoted to You, Tom, was my favourite off that album.
Yeah, we had Grease on the VHS to show my age as well. So, yeah, a bit of a sad day.
And it's a great loss. I mean, she was such an icon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she was and did a lot too.
And her work, cancer research and beyond.